should be recording. I'm gonna wait a second or two just to let Twitch catch up.
Yeah, let's do
Um,
that notificationary thing.
Absolutely.
Give it a couple of seconds, cause like if the notification kicks out, like a minute for people to join and then start.
Absolutely. Because this is definitely something where we're gonna have to, if you miss it, I'm sorry. You're just gonna have to watch the recording on YouTube because
Yeah.
I'm not going back. I'm not doing it.
You don't have any. That was me. I muted. Okay, I gotta figure out.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what's going on there?
Oh,
You just went quiet for a
where?
second.
Okay. Okay, we're back.
We're
My
back.
mouse and keyboard just stopped working. I gotta.
Ooh, that's fun.
Okay.
That's very fun. That's very cash
Very
money.
You were kicking through on the live stream that I was watching here.
Yeah,
Hearing your voice twice.
I was coming through on my end too, so I was hearing my voice twice as well.
I was trying to mute it, and then my mouse and keyboard just stopped working. Okay.
Big F. So yeah, dude. Hey, how's it been going? So I guess all right. First off, introductions. Welcome to Danger Boys podcast. We're recording this live on Twitch, so go to twitch.tv/tapper74 and drop me a follow if you want to see us record the podcast live. And I'm here with a guest, Darius.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. So yeah, dude, how it's been a little while since we've talked, and actually this is your second time on my podcast, right?
Was it the second episode?
Yeah,
That's the one I was on.
Yeah, you, Kayla,
Yeah.
Melvin. I think Ryan joined us too.
Yeah, that was Bill's Mafia. We had a lot on that one.
We did. I think that was whenever the Republicans, or sorry, not the Republicans, the whatever alt-right, not the Republicans, even though it probably was, stormed the Capitol building because Trump actually won the election, even though he didn't.
Oh, forgery and whatnot, huh?
Dude, there were mail ballots in rivers. We're still pulling out the ballots from the rivers today, he said, completely and 100% sarcastically, because no one was throwing ballots into the river. Look, go back and watch that episode. We talk about it there. I'm not talking about it today. Today we're talking about the Battle of Fredericksburg and the American Civil War. It happened in December of 1862 from the 11th to the 14th of December. And the two armies that were involved were the Army of the Potomac, who had about 120,000 men, and the Army of Northern Virginia, who had about 70,000 men. So, Fredericksburg happens kind of in the middle of the war. So before this, there were battles that happened, but this is kind of like really kind of the first serious conflict that has.
Would you say it's like the turning, kind of like the start of the turning point of the war?
It is. It's a mini Gettysburg, to be honest with you. So the Battle of Fredericksburg actually had more troops at the battlefield than Gettysburg, so it's actually a larger conflict than Gettysburg, but way less troops get engaged. So, like, of the 120,000 men that were at Fredericksburg on the Union side, only about, 40,000 of them actually saw combat. And that's the same thing for the southern side. They have 70,000 men, but only, a half of that actually, engaged in battle. And so the numbers are actually really small, but the repercussions of it and the implications of it are a lot bigger, I guess. So the North only lost 12,000 men of 120,000. So that's nothing, when you're talking about, casualties. But what it meant for, the North morale means a lot more. Whenever you lose 12,000 men and your opponent only loses 8,000, that hurts a lot. So yeah, it really was. It was like the first turning point of the Civil War. So before we get into the actual battle, we kind of have to learn how the armies are structured, because we're going to be getting into some terminology And it's just going to be easier if we just clarify it. So this is how your basic army is set up during the Civil War, right? So the smallest unit you have are called regiments. And you get 2 or 5 regiments together, and that makes up a brigade. And then 2 or 4 brigades make up a division. And so a brigadier general is going to be in charge of a brigade. Sometimes it's a colonel. Very rarely is it a lieutenant, a sergeant. It's normally going to be a brigadier general. And then a division is going to be led by a major general, sometimes a brigadier general. And then a division makes up a corps. And the corps is going to be led by the major general or, and you're going to have 2 or 3 divisions in a corps. And then in the army, you're going to have a major general or a field marshal. Army commanders are people like Robert E. Lee, Ulysses S. Grant, and someone we're going to talk about in a little bit, Burnside. And these numbers are a little inflated, right? So, during the Civil War, at the peak of recruitment, this might be accurate. But for the most part, your brigades are going to be somewhere around 1,000 men, maybe 1,500. 2,600 is kind of optimistic. And, corps might have 26,000 people, but, instead of having 2 or 3 divisions, you might have 5 or 6 divisions, right? So that's how you're going to get those higher numbers.
Is this the same as today?
What's that?
Like, is this the same thing as it would be today? Like, is regiment?
Yeah.
800 and...
I
don't know, honestly.
It is.
It sounds about right.
But the numbers are much bigger, right?
Right.
So instead of...
It's like proper terminology.
Right. So, divisions might have hundreds of thousands of men nowadays. And,
right.
corps might be millions. You know what I mean? So then you're looking at an army has, 3 million.
For that time, though.
Right. During the Civil War, this is how it's set up. But yeah, it's still relatively set up the same way today. And cavalry is kind of handled as like its own thing. So you would have a cavalry regiment, but you wouldn't really have a cavalry brigade. You'd have a cavalry division, and then artillery is set up in batteries, right? So there is no, brigade of battery. It's artillery, or you wouldn't have a artillery brigade. You would call it that, but it's also just a battery.
Couldn't that be a division, though? I don't know.
It could.
Think of
it could.
Artillery division. Maybe it's just like today's terminology it's used, because like when you think of divisions, you think of like artillery division, right?
Right.
Or...
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, you would call it a battery or a division. But yeah, generally when you're talking about brigades, you're talking about infantry. Infantry brigade is. But then, like I said, it gets a little confusing. And then also these numbers are very general. So the South had different setups than the North. They had different numbers of men. They had different generals in charge. So it gets a little confusing. And so I had this extra visual here of kind of how you would expect a general army to be set up during this time. So this is the Army of the Gulf from a video game I play called Grand Tactician: The Civil War. I just took a random army and just took a screenshot. So we can see the Army of the Gulf here. So this right here is Banks. He is the head of the army. And then under him, you have a guy named Benton. And this would be Benton's division, right? It could also be his corps, depending on how it's set up. So early on in the war, you don't have a lot of corps because you just don't have that many men. So, you put an army together and then you just have divisions, the 1st division, 2nd division. And then as the war got on and the armies got bigger, you needed to, categorize them better. So you would actually have corps. So for the sake of argument, let's call this Benton's 1st Corps, right? And then under him, you have a division, right? This would be like the 1st division with 2 infantry, and then this is artillery. So you'd have 2 infantry brigades, and then you would have a battery underneath that. And then this would be his 2nd division. And then over here you have McClelland, right? And this would be the 2nd Corps. And under him you'd have his 1st Division and 2nd Division, although, one troop on their own would just be a brigade, right? So this is a brigade, this whole thing is a division, and then this whole thing is a corps, right? Ideally, like I said, whenever, at the start of the war, things weren't this organized, right? You just didn't have this many men, and it wasn't this well organized. As the war goes on, it becomes a lot more organized, and Fredericksburg's kind of, it's not the peak of
Get your shit together point.
Get your shit together.
Come on, kids, get your shit together.
But it's one of those things where, so when we reach Fredericksburg, we actually have corps. We have, large amounts of men, almost 120,000 men in the north, 70,000 in the south. So things are fairly organized. And so let's talk a little bit about the history, what's gotten us up to the point of Fredericksburg. So I'm not going to go into the whole Civil War because I want to do that later. I want to do the Battle of Antietam and Battle of Bull Run and, do a whole breakdown of the Civil War, really. But Fredericksburg's a really interesting battle. It's not my favorite battle. My favorite battle would be Battle of Gettysburg. Like I said, this is kind of like a mini Gettysburg, right? So if you're the Union, right, how do you win the Civil War? Well, you throw everything at the South, right? The North has more men, more guns, basically more of everything. So at the start of the war, Abe's generals are pretty shit, right? Abe's just like, look, go down south, attack the South, crush them, and we'll end this whole rebellion. But his generals are like, I don't really want to do that. That seems like a lot of work. Maybe they'll just, tire themselves out.
Maybe they'll stop.
Maybe
they'll just stop.
They'll just stop on their own, right?
Now, wasn't the South a little bit more militarized? Not as in weaponry, but like regimented, I guess would have been a better way to terminology.
You could say that. They definitely had better commanders, right?
Just not as many people.
Yeah, not as many people, and they don't have any factories down there, right? So they don't have the weaponry and shit. So in 1862, like the summer of 1862, Abe's real pissed. He's pissed at a guy named McClellan, right? He's the head of the Army of the Potomac, and the Army of the Potomac is kind of like, it's the main army of the Union, right? This is the army that fought at the Battle of Gettysburg, Battle of Fredericksburg, several other battles. It's like the main Union army. And he's real pissed at McClellan because McClellan just isn't doing shit, right? He's not attacking the South. He's not pushing the South like he should, like Abe feels he should. So Abe goes to Burnside. Now, Burnside is the leader of the 4th Corps. He's a major general. And he says, hey, Burnside, I'm going to put you in charge of the entire Army of the Potomac. And Burnside, by the way, that's how we get the name Sideburns, right? Because of those lovely, lovely chops that he has.
That's so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
he looks like a mad lad.
He actually isn't. He's actually a very sad lad. He's a sad, pathetic lad, right?
Honestly, the Baron. He looks like a Baron character.
He does look like a Baron. He does. Honestly, I think the sideburns are compensation.
I like how it looks with the picture. One side of the sideburns are slightly more puffed and elevated than the left side. You tell me that left side looks more like it was actually groomed, whereas that right side looks a little bit wild.
Looks very wild. I like on the left side there. It looks like it kind of scoops in, like closer to his cheek is actually down. It gets scooped out. Like when it rains,
yeah.
His fucking sideburns catch water in there or something. But
also it glitched right there. He kind of looked like Dwight K. Schrute too.
Swear. But yeah, so Honest Abe goes to Burnside and says, hey, I'm pissed at McClellan. I'm going to put you in charge. And Burnside's like, well, actually, I don't think I can do that. I'm not a very good general. And Abe's like, all right, fine, whatever. Hooker's going to be in charge then. And Burnside's like, wait. Hooker's a prick. I hate Hooker. He's a piece of shit. Don't put Hooker in charge. I fucking hate that guy. So I'll take it, right? If you're going to kick McClellan out anyways and you're going to give it to Hooker, just give it to me. Fuck Hooker, right? And this is something that's very common during the Civil War, and we're going to get into it in the actual battle where it has significant repercussions. Guys just hate each other. You know, whether they went to like West Point together and they were rivals in school, or you just don't like the look of someone's face. People absolutely hate each other. And it made organizing the army even worse for Abe Lincoln and the South as well. There were some rivals in the South, but not so much. You know, the South is, you know, united under this common banner of, hey, we're going to kick the North's ass. And so they're more willing to work together. And whereas the North is kind of, I don't know, more snobby and preppy. No one really wants to fight in this war, and no one wants to work together. So Burnside hates Hooker, therefore he takes control of the army, right?
Does Hooker hate Burnside?
Yeah, they hate each other.
Oh, okay,
It's
I didn't know if it was like mutual or
Mhm.
not, because like, I don't know, maybe Hooker beat him in cards one night.
Right. And for all I know, that could be the reason why they hate each other. But yeah, no, it's mutual hatred, right? So
Were they just as good generals or
yeah,
captains or leaders?
so Burnside was a good leader, right? He just did not have a lot of confidence in himself, and he didn't like the responsibility. You know, so so like I said, he was head of the 4th Corps before he was promoted to whole army general, right? So when you're head of a corps, you have, you know, roughly 20,000 men under your command, right? He just went from having 20,000 men under his command to 120,000.
I guess that is a good bit, huh?
Right. And we'll see that the Battle of Fredericksburg actually had a pretty big effect on him for the rest of the war and how he felt about himself and, you know, just how you live, you know, with yourself after something like this. So, right, Lincoln's pissed. He puts Burnside in charge and he says, old Bernie boy, you better do something significant here, okay? We need a fucking victory because I'm going to put into action the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Contrary to popular belief, Danny Mullen did not, in fact, free the slaves. That was a man named Abraham Lincoln who actually freed the slaves, not Danny Mullen. But so in September of 1862, Lincoln writes the Emancipation Proclamation, but he doesn't ratify it yet, right? He doesn't make it into a law because he needs to beat the South in combat, right? That hasn't really happened yet. I think the Battle of Antietam was a significant victory for the South, and that's actually one of the reasons why McClellan got replaced, was because he beat the South in battle, but didn't push the attack, right? So the South's retreating, and instead of following them and, you know, beating them down more, McClellan just kind of hangs back and does nothing. So that's why he gets replaced. So Lincoln writes the Emancipation Proclamation, and he tells Burnside, hey, January 1st, I'm signing this thing. Give me a major victory before then, so, you know, this actually has some weight behind it. So I can go to the South and say, hey, look, I'm kicking your ass on the battlefield. I freed all your slaves. Fucking surrender, right? So it's very, very important that Burnside gets a victory. So Burnside goes, all right, I need to get a victory. How do I do that? Where do I go? So he decides to take Richmond, Virginia, which is the capital of the Confederacy during the war. And so up here on this map near like Leesburg, this kind of general area, this is where Burnside is. And he wants to go south to take Richmond, Virginia. But we can see that in between, up here and Richmond is a little town called Fredericksburg, which I helpfully put a giant blue arrow over so you couldn't actually see the full name of it. Which I'm just now realizing I did, which is funny. But Fredericksburg is a very important town, which General Lee of the South kind of overlooked. He didn't think that Burnside was going to attack Fredericksburg, but it's very much necessary for the North to take Fredericksburg because, trains, right? So when you're an army in the Civil War, right, you need men, you need guns, you need ammo, you need food, you need clothing. And how do you get that? Well, through trains. And Fredericksburg is a significant hub for the South, right? You have the Rappahannock River, you got the train lines, you got roads. Everything kind of converges on Fredericksburg before going to Richmond. So Burnside takes Fredericksburg, gets control of the trains. Now he can bring more men and supplies down south to help reinforce Richmond when they take that. But there's a problem with Fredericksburg, and that is the Big Ash River. So here you have the Rappahannock River, and this is modern day Fredericksburg, right? So Fredericksburg back in the 1800s, it's kind of like from like where this like there's this big like clump of trees here. So Fredericksburg's actually like that instead of this whole thing, back in the 1800s. So
And they really did expand, though.
They did, and like I said, it helps that there's such a major connection.
Like a hub.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where again Fredericksburg really mirrors Gettysburg, because in Gettysburg, all the roads converge in Gettysburg. And whenever I do my Gettysburg breakdown, we'll talk more about that. But everything kind of converges there. So during this time, right, Fredericksburg has about 5,000 people living in it. A quarter of those people being slaves, by the way. And it's a very rich town. They got a lot of exports, big cotton town, very wealthy. And so we see over here, right, up here is Washington, D.C., right? Down here is Richmond. And in order to get from Washington to Richmond, you got to cross the river. And there's a railway line here, right? And that's kind of the only crossing during the 1800s. Like this bridge, King's Highway, this bridge isn't there. And if you get your army together and march across this railroad track, well, now you just put 120,000 men into a funnel, and all you have to do is just aim one cannon down that funnel and everyone's dead, right? So how do you get across the river? A lovely little thing called Pontoon Bridges, right? So I don't know if this is from World War I or World War II. I don't know. I just found this picture on
That definitely looks World War II. That's a beefy tank.
Beefy tank, but it shows the power of pontoon bridges, right? So pontoon bridges go all the way back to Roman times, right? You get a whole bunch of shit together that floats. You tie it together, tie some boards to that, and then you can get across the river. And as you can see here, I mean, these things are strong, right? You can support tanks, and during the Civil War, you can get artillery across, horses, whole divisions of men. And so it's this, it's a very effective way to move troops across rivers. And so Burnside's idea, right, is to get 3 crossings, right? So, get a crossing up here on like the north side, get a crossing in the middle, and get a crossing on the south side, right? So this way you're taking your 120,000 men, you're splitting them up into 3 groups. You can get them across the river safely, and the south doesn't really know where to shoot. You can take aim, but okay, you're shooting up here at the north, while the south and the middle are getting across, whatnot. So split the army into 3, get 3 crossings, get across. Problem is, of course, you need pontoon boats to do this, which the army didn't have. And Burnside knew that he needed the pontoon boats.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
How do you come up with this devious plan? Oh, I'm gonna split the army into 3. I'm assuming 2 bridges and then take the train for the 3rd one, right?
No, all pontoon. Never even considered the train bridge, by the way.
So you have the idea of let's make 3 bridges, but we're gonna need pontoons, and just forget the pontoon? Like,
no, he didn't forget the pontoons. Burnside remembered. The people who forgot were the bureaucrats, the lovely bureaucrats. So Burnside's up here in Washington, D.C., right? He starts going south, and he's like, hey, Washington, I need boats. Can you get me some boats? And Washington's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So the boats are up here in the Potomac River somewhere. Where it is exactly, no one really knows. But they're somewhere in the Potomac River. And they got to go south, right? So Burnside's like, hey, I'm going to be in Fredericksburg, mid-November. Get me the boats. And Washington's like, yep, you got it. No problem, Burnside. We're going to get you those boats. Well, the bureaucrats fucking failed. Because, of course they did, because politicians fucking suck. Due to some logistical nightmares, Washington's like, ooh, sorry, Burnside. Kind of forgot to get you those boats. So, okay, so Burnside, let's talk a little bit about the Army organization of who we're actually talking about here, right? So, here's how the Union Army is set up, right? So, Burnside is above these guys, right? So, this is, you got Franklin on the left, Hooker in the center, Sumner on the right, right? So, these are kind of like the three groups that are going to be crossing on those boats. Or not on the boats, but on the bridges that they build. So on the left side, you have Couch of the 2nd Corps. And Couch is actually, you know what his first name is? Darius.
What a man.
What a man. Yeah, Darius Couch of the 2nd Corps.
Wait, are those names actually like, is that really Wilcox the 9th?
No. So that's
that's the Corps. That's the Corps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wilcox of the 4th Corps.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, Will Couch. Yeah, so Darius Couch of the 2nd Corps, Wilcox of the 4th Corps. Those guys are under Franklin, right?
That's probably the best one on the left.
Yeah. So the left is, when we get into the battle, is the significant side, right? The left is the main attacking force.
Because now I'm thinking about it, I'd probably feel safer under Hooker because he was about to be the general,
right?
And then Burnside came in and was like, "Yo,
actually,
you ain't as silent as I am."
Sorry to tell you this, bud. I'm taking your job. Yeah. So we got Hooker in the center, right, under Stoneman, the 3rd Corps, and Butterfield of the 5th Corps. And then over here we have Sumner on the right, who has Reynolds under the 1st Corps and Smith under the 4th Corps. Now, Mead is under Reynolds. Right, and this causes some problems we'll get into later. But Reynolds helps Franklin on the left, which, like I said, we'll get into why that causes some problems. But obviously, George Meade, he ends up becoming the leader of the Potomac, of the Army of the Potomac, during Gettysburg. So you can see how he rose up through the ranks, right? He's underneath, 4 guys at this point, right? And he jumps all those guys to become the leader. And then there's a bunch of other dudes we'll worry about, all the division commanders and brigade leaders and shit. We won't get into all of them, but the ones that we do talk about, we'll worry about them later. And then we have the South, right? The bad guys. Boo. So you have Lee, right? General Lee. Everyone knows him. Very famous commander. And under him, you have Longstreet of the 1st Corps, Stonewall of the 2nd Corps, and Jeb Stuart and his cavalry. And under Jeb Stuart, there's a guy named Pelham, and he's a dude with a gun. And he is a badass, and we'll talk about him a little bit later.
Not just a dude with a gun, a badass with a gun.
Badass dude with a gun, exactly. And then there's a bunch of dudes we'll worry about later. But, right, so those are the main players. Those are the people that we're worried about. So here's the movements of the army, right? So up here, Burnside takes command of the army, right? And so you can see Stonewall Jackson's over here near Millwood, and you have Longstreet down here at Culpeper Courthouse. Now this is what Lee does. Lee splits his army into 2. He does it all the time. It's like his signature move, right? So he puts Jackson up north, and he puts Longstreet down at the south. So no matter where Burnside decides to go, he's running into somebody. If he decides to go west into West Virginia, Jackson's going to engage him. If he goes south towards Richmond, Longstreet's going to engage him. And you can see, so Burnside moves south, and then he moves west around the Bull Run Mountains to kind of confuse Lee a little bit, right? So he's like, ooh, I'm going west. Ooh, now I'm going south. Ooh, where am I going? Ooh, right? And it does. It actually confuses Lee. Lee doesn't know where he's going, and he especially doesn't think he's going to take Fredericksburg, right? He does not think that is his plan, Burnside's plan. He thinks that Burnside's going to do something else. I don't know what exactly, but he was thinking he was going to do something else. So Burnside ends up down here, and he's like, okay, I want to take Fredericksburg. I need boats. Tells Washington, hey, give me the boats. Washington doesn't send him the boats. So Burnside marches down to Fredericksburg, and he ends up on the other side of the river, right? And turns out he has no resistance. There is nobody in Fredericksburg. There's like 1,000 men, if that. So if they had the pontoon boats when they needed them, they could have crossed into Fredericksburg, taken the town, and on to Richmond. The war could have been over, to be honest with you, if Burnside just had his fucking pontoon boats. But of course he didn't, so he had to wait. Had to wait 10 days. And by that point, Lee realized what he was doing, right? He sends Longstreet over. Longstreet has about 4,000 men with him, and they set up on the hills outside of town. And then Jackson shows up, and Stuart shows up, and Lee shows up. So you went from having 1,000 men to 4,000 men to now 70,000 men, right? And Burnside still doesn't have his fucking boats. Right? So this just went from easy peasy to really hard real quick.
They put the difficulty from rookie to all pro real fast just because of boats. And like I feel like Congress was because they probably pitched the idea of the assault to Congress or some higher ups, bureaucrats, right? So like they probably at one point was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We'll get you those boats, man. And 10 days pass, and they're like, yeah, fuck, the boats are on their way. Don't worry.
I swear. And something else to remember too is that it's winter, right? So the roads are icy. The rivers. I don't know if the rivers are freezing, right? But it's not perfect weather. So there's a lot of things going against Burnside here. But something else that should really piss off Burnside is that Abe wants this attack, right? Abe's like, yo, get this shit done, start taking on the South, kick their fucking ass. And he's like, okay, cool. Like, all I need is some boats. And, I'm not saying it's Abe Lincoln's fault, but, the bureaucrats let him down, even though that they're the ones that want this war. So, But right, so December 11th, the boats arrive, right? I think they arrived on the 10th or something. And Burnside has a decision to make, right? Okay, so we went from 1,000 men to 40,000 men, or 70,000 men, not 40,000, 70,000 men on the southern side, right? So this town went from nobody to a lot of people real quick. Do we still go ahead with this plan, right? We got the boats now. We could withdraw and redeploy and try something else, or we could go across the river and continue with this attack. And obviously we're talking about the Battle of Fredericksburg, so they decide to attack. Now, who I really feel bad for are the civilians, right? So just imagine that, right? Like you're sleeping in bed and you wake up one day and there's 120,000 Union soldiers outside your window on your right. And you look out the left and there's 70,000 Confederates on the other side on the other window. And your house is right in the fucking middle, right? So you get the hell out of Dodge. So basically the whole town evacuates itself, but it's not organized, right? These people are fleeing with whatever worldly possessions they can carry, and they have no idea where they're going. It's the middle of December, they're fucking cold, and their house is about to get destroyed. So, R.I.P. These poor bastards, these poor civilians. So, so Burnside's like, all right, this is easy. Main Union Army is here. You can see this is that railroad bridge I was talking about earlier, which again just doesn't come up. They just like, yeah, we're not going to use it. So you have the main rebel army here, right? You got Longstreet, and Stonewall Jackson, and Jeb Stuart, and Robert E. Lee. They're all over here. You got the Union Army. You got the Union Army over here. And in the middle of the town, you have Brigadier General Barksdale's Mississippi Brigade. This is a very small rebel group, one brigade, right? So we're talking about 1,000, 2,000 men. And they're just kind of chilling in the town, right? Lee's like, hey, Barksdale, just slow them down if you can. Just delay them as much as you can. Make life hard for them. Now, this is where the Civil War really starts becoming a modern war. So before the Civil War, right, and in previous battles, you're using things like flint muskets, which are slow to reload, they're heavy as hell, and they're not very accurate. So in order to fight in a war, you line up a whole bunch of men in a straight line, and you put them in two columns. So there's, you put one guy in front, and then right behind him, his toes on the other guy's heels. And the guy in front loads his musket, fires, crouches down. The guy behind him loads his musket, fires. And then you do that. And that's called volley fire, right? And that's how all wars have been fought up until this point, especially in America. But this small rebel group, they have snipers, right? Snipers is now a thing. It wasn't a thing 20 years ago, but now it is. So you have, now it's called rifling, right? And for people who don't know, inside of a gun, especially modern guns, there's rifling on the inside of the barrel. And what that does is that spins the bullet. And if you've ever watched Patrick Mahomes throw a football, you know how accurate you can be when you throw something in a very tight spiral. So you have all of these rebels, and they've taken up inside of the houses. They're inside the windows, and they're hiding outside behind the bricks, like chimneys. They're using cover, which is, again, it's something new. They've never, urban warfare is not a thing. Let's see. So Burnside is like, all right, look, we got to build the boats. Let's get the bridge built. So he sends out his engineers to start building the boats. And Barksdale just has a field day just picking these guys off one by one. Engineers are dropping left and right. So Burnside's like, all right, come back. And he tells his commander, Hunt, Henry J. Hunt, to launch an artillery barrage into the town, right? So Henry J. Hunt has about 150 guns, and he just lets loose, right? I think it's like a 5-hour barrage or something. Like it's a long ass barrage. Where
is that the most amount of artillery guns used up until this point?
I think so.
Because that's a lot.
It's
and
a
just
lot.
to rain down on one town, like.
Exactly, dude. Absolute devastation. And it's something where the Confederates and the Union, like I said, it's not the first battle of the Civil War, but it's the first one where people are like, oh shit, this is something. This is something more than just a little skirmish. So yeah, they rain hell down onto the town and kind of level it. So Hunt launches the attack, right? Barrages the town, and Hunt goes to Burnside, and he's like, hey man, look, did all I can. Pretty sure they're all dead. You're clear to continue. And a guy named Colonel Norman Hall, he volunteers his brigade, and he's like, hey, we'll row across the river, and we'll get a little beachhead so the engineers have clear path to build the boats. And Burnside's like, yo, dude, don't do it. Like, that's gonna mean death. And Hall's men were like, no, we're cool with it. Like, they give 3 cheers. They're like, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. And and so Burnside's like, all right, look, you guys are clearly on a death mission here. I'm not going to stop you. Go ahead. So Hall's men pile into a whole bunch of rowboats and row across the river to the other side. And again, they're getting picked off by these sniper fires because, surprise, surprise, Hunt's barrage basically did nothing. It destroyed the town, so this is what it looked like before. Maybe, I don't know, this is just a picture. I typed in Fredericksburg town before, and this is the picture that came up. So this might be Fredericksburg. It might not be. I have no idea.
I mean, it looks pretty.
It looks like a railroad, like a miniature railroad town. You know what I mean? Like, it looks so idyllic and picturesque. Like, it seems a little. I don't know though. I don't know.
Yeah, see, but wasn't this kind of like a point of the South that was a big like trading hub?
It was. It was.
Like,
It was a very wealthy
plantations
town.
are around, so like it'd probably export from here. I would assume it's pretty close to DC too, so like that's probably a fast route to get everything too.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, I have no reason to doubt that this isn't Fredericksburg, but like I said, there's people out there who know so much shit about this war, you know what I mean? They'd be like, actually, that's not a picture of Fredericksburg. That's a picture of fuck off, Washington or what, I don't know. But anyways, so that's before and that's after, right? So you can see whole buildings are destroyed. The town's basically leveled, but not leveled enough. So most of these houses have basements, right? So all the snipers, when the artillery barrage starts, just go down to the basement. And when they come back up, like you look at over here at this building, like there's still windows to use for cover. There's still debris to use for cover. Like they didn't go anywhere. They're still there. So Hunt's like, yeah, you're good. You can go ahead and attack. Burnside says, all right, go ahead. Hall, get over there. So they start rowing across the river, right? And then sniper fire starts up again. But somehow they're able to land on the other side. And this is another first. It's the first ever landing, like river crossing under fire in American history. So this is a painting based off of the movie A Bridge Too Far, which you've ever seen that movie. The army gets into boats and they row across this river as Germans are just firing down upon them. And if you've ever seen that movie, you know how devastating that can be, because you're in a boat, you're cold because it's December, and you're getting shot at from all directions. So very brave, the men who crossed this river. And also urban warfare. Like I said, urban warfare wasn't a thing before this battle, and now it is. So they get across, right? So the 7th Michigan, the 19th Massachusetts, and the 20th Massachusetts get in the rowboats, they cross the river, and they start pushing through the town, right? And they push that small rebel force in town. They push them out, right? And this is the hills. You can see it a little bit more clearly here where the main Confederate force was. So at the end of the day, on the 11th, the Union has Fredericksburg, right? And they start looting. So the Union did it too, right? It's war, right? Everyone did crimes on both sides. And Fredericksburg is looted. And the looting quickly turned from, just, okay, we're going to take food and supplies to, okay, we're going to burn this place to the ground. They take clothing and furniture and smash it and burn it. Whatever they couldn't carry, they burned. So this really, really pisses off the Confederacy, right? So before this, during these other skirmishes that happened, the other battles, there wasn't really hatred between the North and the South. Like, some guys did, but most of it was, hey, we're here because we have to be here. We're fighting because we have to. I don't actually hate you. After Fredericksburg, it definitely was, I fucking hate you. Especially from the southern side. So that really fueled, this was great propaganda for the Confederacy. Look at the foreign invaders. Look at how they treat us. Look how awful they are. And it really increases the resolve of the Southern men. And so, yeah, so like I said, the North did bad shit too, just like the South. Although the South didn't do as much looting because, of course, they were Southern men. But towards the end of the war, when things got really desperate, this was happening on both sides. The South would roll into a town and, loot the whole place because they needed supplies. And the North was obviously doing that too. So yeah, civilians just got a really raw deal in this whole thing. So, right, so let's go back a little bit. So, right, they take the town, they build the bridges, they start bringing men across, but not that many, right? So, how do you win this battle if you're Burnside, right? Well, you have 120,000 men, the South has 70,000. Throw all 120,000 men at once against the South, and you'll win. It's that easy. But Burnside doesn't want to do that because, again, he's a timid, shy man. He doesn't want to throw 120,000 men at this and watch them all die. So he does something much worse. So on the 12th, right, in an informal meeting, he brings, he talks to Franklin and Hooker and all his other guys, and he's like, all right, look, Franklin, you're going to launch the main attack. You're going to be the main force of this. Hooker's going to support you. And then, oh shit, I forgot his name. And then Sumner is going to be doing a diversionary tactic on the right. Right? So, main force is going to be over here on the left. Right? This is going to be the main attack. And then on the right over here is going to be a bit of a diversion. So, based off these orders, Franklin's like, okay, sweet. You're going to, tell me to move every man under my command through town, up the hill, take the hill. Hooker's going to support me. That's great. We greatly outnumber the South. This should be pretty easy. And so Burnside tells Franklin, hey, relax, take it easy. I'll give you the official orders later, right? And so all through the night, Franklin is up, right? He can't sleep because he's waiting on the orders from Burnside, which don't come. So Burnside wants the attack to start at 6 a.m., right? As soon as the sun comes up, get the men in position, get them marching. We're gonna go start taking that hill. Fighting's not gonna start until a little bit after that. Probably around 9, 10 o'clock. But 6 a.m. I want the men up and moving. So on the morning of the 13th, he sends a messenger over to Franklin. Right? That's how you send messages back then. You got a guy and a horse with a knapsack and
messenger boy,
right? But of course it's December, so it's cold and it's snowy and it's icy. So the guy can't go that quick. So like 7:30 in the morning, the messenger from Franklin or from Burnside finally gets to Franklin. And he's like, "All right, look, just send like a division to go take the hill. Don't send everybody." And the reason why Burnside did this is because he thought it would intimidate Lee, right? He'd be like, "Okay, oh shit, they're sending a division after us. We're gonna quit." Is Burnside's idea. Again, Burnside not a great general, and obviously from what we know about Lee, in hindsight, but also what he should have known about Lee at the time is that Lee's just not gonna fucking give up, right? Lee has great resolve, and so it didn't intimidate Lee at all. And Franklin is pretty disappointed in the orders, right?
I think this just adds to the conspiracy that Burnside is a bad card player because he just tried to bluff and it didn't work. I mean, especially with one of the best at that time, Lee.
Right. Literally one of the best generals.
I mean, they had so much advantage in that whole situation too. They were on top of hills. Like what? I don't know. I think it's kind of crazy to think, hey, if we just go to this town, they're gonna back off.
Right. And
they already destroyed the town.
Right. And you look at like I said, you look at Gettysburg, right? Lee sends Pickett's whole division across an open fucking battlefield with cannons shooting at them and just lets them all die. Lee's not gonna give up, dude.
Yeah.
But Burnside is optimistic. He's like, okay, we'll take Prospect Hill, and it'll be easy. Division. Lee's gonna give up, right? So here's the battle. So ignore the yellow box, right? We'll get into the yellow box later. But we're focused down here, where you see Prospect Hill. So here we see the boats, right? So these are the pontoon bridges. So here's the first one, here's the second one, here's the third one, right? So Burnside tells Franklin, hey, go take Prospect Hill with a division. So Franklin goes to Reynolds and tells Reynolds, hey, go take Prospect Hill. And Reynolds tells Mead, Mead has the smallest division, right? Mead has like 4,500 men. You're going to go take Prospect Hill. So that's like the chain of command as well. You're playing phone tag a bit, right? Burnside tells Franklin tells Reynolds tells Mead, So in between that, there's a lot of loss in translation. So Burnside gives the order to Franklin, and then Franklin has to interpret that. And then Reynolds has to interpret that. And then Mead has to interpret that. So Reynolds tells Mead and Gibbon, hey, you guys are going to be the main attack. You guys are going to push up to Prospect Hill. Gibbon, you're going to support Mead, right? And what does support mean? Does support mean charge in there with him? Does support mean stay back and hold the flank? What does support mean? Again, interpretation. And over here you have Abner Doubleday. So Abner Doubleday is going to push out over this way and hold off the flank. And then here you have W.F. Smith, and they're just going to kind of sit in the middle here and just kind of make sure that no one pushes down. So, at like I said, so the orders take a while to get to Franklin, right? Which means it takes a while to get to Reynolds and then to Meade. So at like 10 a.m., all the men are in position to start the attack. So there's a fog over the town as well, right? So December, cold, fog. The fog lifts at 10 a.m. and the attack starts. So Reynolds and Doubleday, they start moving up, right? And over here we see Pelham, right? Badass Pelham with a gun. So Pelham talks to his commander, right, Jeb Stewart, and says, hey, can I go down there, like down here, like off the main line, and just kind of fuck with them?
Do my thing.
Do my thing, bro. And Stewart's like, you're a crazy son of a bitch. Go get him. And slaps him on the ass, and Pelham goes down there. And he has one gun, right? Pelham has one gun, and he just starts firing into Reynolds and Doubleday. And they freak the fuck out, right? Reynolds and Doubleday, they got like thousands of men under their command, right? And you got Pelham with one gun holding them all back. So how do you take out artillery during the Civil War, right? You throw a whole bunch of men at it. You know, the guns, they take a while to reload. They're heavy to move. So if you push a whole bunch of men at a gun, it's going to have to give up. You're going to lose some men, you know, in the cannon fire, but eventually you're going to take the gun. Reynolds and Franklin, they don't think that one guy could be down there, right, with one gun. They think it has to be more than one guy. So they all sit back and wait. And wait and wait and wait. And they wait 2 hours. And the entire time, Pelham is like jiving and jossing, like moving back and forth and left and right and moving all over the place. You know, the guy's having a fucking field day out there. I think he's only 24 as well. So this guy is a real badass. And it holds up the entire Union Army for 2 whole hours. So we went from 10 a.m. to now it's, you know, almost noon, a little bit past noon, and Pelham runs out of ammo, right? Oh, by the way, a second gun joined Pelham while Pelham was doing this whole thing, and that gun got destroyed. So Pelham, 1, got super lucky, and 2 is just an amazing artillery commander. So finally, Pelham falls back, and Reynolds and Meade, they push forward. So we see over here, right? So Meade's 1st Brigade, right? So again, we're going back to that whole division brigade. So Meade has his 1st Brigade with him, and they push up here onto this guy, Gregg, right? So there is a gap in the line here. So you see Archer here, and then it dips back. You know, the line is convex or concave. It's concave.
Hey.
So there's a swamp here, right, in between Gregg and the Union. And Gregg thinks to himself that there is absolutely no way anyone's getting through this swamp, right? No way. You can't get through the swamp. Really no reason to pay attention to it. Gregg is, in fact, eating breakfast, right? His men are sitting around, you know, their guns are leaning off onto the side, you know, sitting on trees or, you know, crossed over each other or whatever. They're eating, chilling out. And so Meade pushes his 1st Brigade up through the swamp, through the trees, and right into Gregg's front lap. And Gregg's men freak the fuck out, right? Because, hey, you're not supposed to be here. So they start shooting. But Gregg is like, yeah, there's no way that's the Union. Guys, stop firing. He's riding in front of his men, going, stop firing, stop it. Those are our friendlies, stop doing it. And then someone shoots Gregg in the spine. And Gregg falls over. He dies later on in the battle. But now Gregg's men don't have a commander, right? So half of them just got the order to stop shooting. The other half are still firing. Some of them think they're friendly. Some of them think that they're not. So Meade takes Gregg's division, right? They capture him. They're actually like the only group that surrenders during this battle. So Meade pushes through the line, miraculously, by the way, because considering he only had 4,000 men. And Meade goes to Gibbon. He's like, yo, dude, we're pushing. Like, come on, give me a hand. And Gibbon's like, you're not the boss of me. Like, you're not my commander. And Meade's like, what? What are you talking about? Gibbon's like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not gonna attack with you. And so Meade sends over a messenger boy, right? And the messenger boy returns with Gibbon's answer of, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. So then Meade goes over himself to find Gibbon. And the men who overheard Meade berating Gibbon, Meade had a fucking mouth on him, right? They were like, even the rocks were terrified after Meade laid into this poor son of a bitch. Just every swear word you can think of.
It would have been a really good one too, because it was back in the day.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't be hearing the slang that you would today.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it is absolutely.
Did anybody have a quote for that?
No quotes. I think
Yeah.
I think if somebody would have written that in their book, the
I
book would
really
have caught
wish
fire.
somebody. I'm sure there's some sort of record out there
There has to be.
of what he said roughly.
I swear. Oh hey, Tabbycat, what's going on? I'm doing pretty good. We're discussing the Battle of Fredericksburg from the Civil War. I'm doing pretty good. So Meade is, and has been forever. I know it's been a really long time, but hopefully I'll do this more frequently. So Meade goes to Gibbon. He's like, Gibbon, please attack with me. And finally, Gibbon is like, okay, we'll attack with you, but it's too late, right? Early is back in what's the word I'm looking for? Reserve.
Right?
Reserve. Yeah. So.
Okay.
So whenever you set up these lines, right? So that's instead of ignoring the yellow box, let's look at it. So inside the yellow box, you have this front line, you have the second line, and then you have reserve, right? So this guy dies, you can pull up the reserve. That's how these battles are fought. So Greg falls, Early pulls in to fill in the gap, and by that point it's too late. If Meade had given support, they could have taken this. And really shut down the whole, they could have won, be honest with you. Like, this was the turning point of the battle. But it doesn't work. Early pushes up, Meade has to retreat, and Gibbon retreats. And so Stonewall Jackson that's the main commander here, right? We all know Stonewall Jackson, right? Very famous Civil War leader. Starts to push back onto Reynolds' position, right? But night falls before he can push back too far. So Jackson falls back to his lines. Meade falls back to his line. With Reynolds and Franklin, they fall back. And this is a fairly even battle, considering the terrible preparation of Franklin's force and how unprepared Greg was. So the North loses about 5,000 men. Stonewall loses about 3,500. So it's fairly even losses, more for the North than the South, but that's pretty even, right? So at the same time, now we can look at the yellow box. So you have Marias Heights, which is, again, the distraction. But the distraction quickly turns into the main force, right? This turns into the main attack. Got the same number of follows we follow buddies now? Hell yeah, Tap the Cat. Hell yeah. So, right.
What's that?
So,
I'm sure you're going to explain it.
Mhm.
Those 3 blue arrows, I'm guessing shit didn't go well.
Yeah, no, shit did not go well at all. So
Okay.
this is pushing up and then falling back.
I just love how it went from like this new aged warfare to just reverted back to the same old warfare.
Right.
Like,
You got
in the town, you go from like modern day warfare, and then you just go right back. But like obviously, like that wasn't planned.
right. Right. Honestly,
that
pretty much none of this was
transpired, but
planned.
It's just like crazy how fast like everybody was able to just adapt to that situation at hand.
Right. That's something else that's there are
Oh, not the North in their boats. Though.
Right.
That was no fast adapting.
Right. That's something that most of these men are fairly battle hardened. They're soon to be of much harder, but these aren't fresh recruits. Some of them are. There are several brigades that a lot of these guys kept journals, and they talk about how, you know, the whole division just would not move. You know, like their feet wouldn't move because of how, you know, terrified they were. But a lot of these guys were pretty hardened. So, you know, they understood combat. They understood what they were doing. But yeah, it's funny how you have old school combat, new school, and then old school again. But yeah, so you got over here, these jagged lines are artillery, right? So you got all these guns here waiting for him. And Sumner sends up, again, he has the same orders as the other side, right? As over here with Franklin, right? Send a division in at a time. Which again is suicide, because that's how you get murdered by the gun, right? Then you overwhelm the guns. That's how you do it. If you just send one division at a time or one brigade at a time, the guns are gonna fucking destroy you. So, so Sumner, right, orders French to go and take the hill, right? And French gets repelled. That's one of the arrows, right? So Sumner goes to Hancock. He's like, go take that hill. And Hancock gets repelled. That's the other one. And then Sumner's like, hey, Howard, Sturgis, go take that hill. And that's the other arrow.
Okay.
They do this like 18 times.
Big fail on their end.
Big fail.
If it didn't work, if it didn't work once, try it again.
Try it again.
Didn't work twice. Try it again.
Try it
And
again.
if it didn't work, try it again.
Right.
Wait,
And
did you try it again?
did you try it again? Okay, look, one more time. Let's try it again. Right. So, and something else too, right? So during this time, like I said, whenever you're going to fire in a line, right, you line up a straight line of guys, and then you have them go heel to toe, and you have them reload, fire, reload, fire, move 10 paces forward, reload, fire, and then move again, and then reload, fire. And that's exactly what the South is doing, except they're not moving, right? They're standing still, so they can just reload, fire, reload, fire, reload, fire, reload, fire, you know. And some of these guys are really good, you know what I mean? You can get a musket reloaded in like 20 seconds. So, as French moves up, he has to stop, fire, move, stop, fire. So it's just the easiest pickings, you know, these guys could have ever asked for. Yes, we are. We're talking about the Civil War, Tap to Cat.
So interesting.
Very interesting. Right, so 7 divisions in total are sent and are repelled. And the Union loses about 7,500 men, and the South only loses 1,200. So this is where the numbers really start getting extreme. Now, like I said, in the context of having 120,000 men, 7,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but, you know, this isn't a video game, right? The bodies don't despawn. So, whenever French moves up and he gets repelled back, Hancock now has to step over all of French's dead bodies, right? And then all of Hancock's dead bodies join French's dead bodies. And now Howard and Sturgis have to walk over that, you know? So it's horrific shit. And, you know, whenever you get shot by a modern day bullet, it's pretty clean. You know, the bullet's going to go through you and, you know, it's going to hurt like hell. But as long as you don't hit a major artery and you're able to get pressure on the wound and get to a hospital, you're probably going to survive. Back then, muskets were very nasty. So when you get shot in the shoulder by a musket ball, your whole shoulder is destroyed.
Yeah, that's gone.
And the musket ball doesn't hold together very well. So now you have shrapnel in your shoulder on top of that. That's why there's so many amputations. So not only is Hancock marching over French's dead men, he's also marching over guys who are like, please, you know, crying out for their, you know, their loved ones and just, you know, screaming in pain. And, no, Tap to Cat, this is actually the American Civil War. Yeah, the American Civil War. Right, so again, you lose 7,000 men. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. So, December 14th, right? Now, this isn't from the Battle of Fredericksburg, but, you know, we can see that this is, you know, imagine this, but 75,000. And so, yeah, it sucked being a soldier. It still sucks being a soldier.
I mean, it sucks to be anybody in that situation, even the civilians.
Right, even the civilians, exactly.
Was there any civilians harmed in this battle? Or
you
did
know,
everybody get evacuated?
not everybody got evacuated, but I think that there, at most there were like 10 civilian deaths, but I don't think there were
Okay.
any. Like there were
Uh,
none
uh,
reported. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like I think that 10 might just be like, look, some civilians had to die here, right? Yeah, just put down 10. That's a good number. But I don't think anybody actually died from the civilian side. Just all their shit was destroyed.
Yeah. Wow.
But yes, like I said, overall, pretty good for the civilians. As far as the casualties. Um, Same thing with Gettysburg, by the way. Not a lot of civilian casualties. But right, so on the 14th, right? So after that horrible attack, Burnside's like, okay, I just spent 7,500 men to their death on one side, and I sent 5,000 men to their death on the other. That's awful. And actually, so let's go back. This over here, this is called the slaughter pen. So that's fun. Yeah, whenever something's called the slaughter pen, you know it's bad.
That is not a good one to be known as.
Right. But yeah, so Burnside is depressed, right? He sent all these men to their death for no good reason. He's like, okay, I'm gonna take my 4th Corps, and I'm going to lead the attack tomorrow. Basically he knows it's a suicide mission, and he kind of hopes that he dies. I can't live with myself. I'm gonna lead the attack. I'm gonna die valiantly in battle, and I won't have to live the rest of my life knowing that I got all these men killed. And his commanders are like, hey, dude, don't do that. Just knock it off. And so Burnside decides, okay, you know what? We're not actually going to do that. That's a terrible idea. I'm not going to lead the attack.
About it, and then got smacked out of him.
Exactly. So on the 14th, right? There's not a lot that goes on. There's some skirmishes. There's some artillery fire, but it's pretty quiet. And so, you still have all of the North guys, right? They were, they're still there. Again, bodies don't despawn. So they've been laying out in this battlefield overnight, crying out in pain. A lot of them are begging for water. A lot of them are pulling dead bodies on top of them, to like, hey, don't look over here, dead body, like, don't kill me. And so Richard Kirkland, who was a Southern Confederate boy, a good soldier, he's a sergeant, and he goes to his commander and he's like, "Hey, can I go give some of these guys some water?" And his sergeant's like, "I mean, that's a really stupid idea, but if you want to, like, I'm not gonna stop you." And so Kirkland jumps over the wall and starts giving the guys water, right? And the Union starts shooting at him. Because they're like, oh shit, he's looting the bodies, like let's fucking kill him. But then they see that he's giving them water, and so I think this might be Southern propaganda. I don't know how true it is, but apparently on both sides, they cheered Kirkland. And in 1970, he got a Confederate Medal of Honor, which was an award created like 100 years after the Confederacy folded. I think it was like a form of like, hey, we're gonna show people that the South's still here. The South's gonna rise again. We got our own Medal of Honor. So they gave Richard Kirkland a Medal of Honor, which he, if the story's true, he deserves. You know what I mean? He went out there and as like a,
an act of humanity.
Right. And so there is some, but the thing is, right? So they say that the North cheered him too. But again, these guys fucking hated each other. Right? So Fredericksburg was just destroyed, burned to the ground. The South is super pissed about that. And so the whole day goes by. Like I said, not much happens. There's some skirmishes. Nothing really happens. On the 15th, the North retreats. Right? So here's the Battle of Fredericksburg. Here's the final numbers, right? So Army of the Potomac suffers devastating defeat. You have 120,000 men. 12,000 of them died or lost or wounded or, and then the South, you got 78,000, 5,000. So significantly more losses than the South. But something about this war, right, is that's not all that bad for the North. Like the North can take it. You know what I mean? they can easily find 12,500 men to replace the guys they just lost. The South has a much harder time finding the 5,000 men to be replaced.
Yeah, that is rough. Holy it, it, and because like the North lost so many more in comparison, but then you look at the numbers that they had versus South, and like that's detrimental. 5,000 guys.
Absolutely. And like I said, as the war goes on, you find the South finds less and less men. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it becomes so much harder.
Yeah.
That's Darius. That's
Hello.
my co-host for today, my guest.
I was on the second one.
He was on the second live stream or the second podcast episode.
Which actually, we're going strong here.
We are. So coming up on the end of it here. So right. So the North retreats under the cover of darkness, and they get away relatively unnoticed. It's like, so Lee goes to sleep on the 14th, wakes up on the 15th, and the Union's just gone. Which is good because that means that the North can retreat and lick its wounds. So here are the significant losses, right? So John Gibbon, who was supposed to help attack with Mead, he's wounded on the north side. Nathan Kimball is wounded. John Caldwell is wounded. George Bayard is killed, and Conrad Jackson is killed. And these guys are all Union commanders. And on the southern side, Maxie Gregg, who was the guy who was caught off guard, he's killed. Thomas Cobb is killed. William Pender is wounded, and John Cook is wounded. And this is another thing that's kind of prevalent throughout the entire war, is that the North can kind of replace its generals. The South can't. They can, obviously, and I mean, they do. They replace Stonewall Jackson, but it's much more significant for the South to lose these commanders than it is for the North. So after the battle, right, all of the Confederate newspapers print out, the foreign invaders and, the monsters who destroyed Fredericksburg, right? The support for the Southern War skyrockets, right? People are just loving this shit. That video that we watched with James Earl Jones, there was that one letter from that woman where she was like, if I could take up arms and kill those.
Oh, yeah, no, I did see that, dude. That was, the amount of patriotism that was held there after that it is insane.
It was.
And they were like, she was like, and God will be on our side and all that.
It's your Christian duty to murder hundreds of thousands of Northern men. It's your Christian duty. I was like, Jesus Christ. But then I remember Southern Baptist, and I'm like, no, that sounds about right. Their Jesus is the Jesus with an M40 in one hand and a Bible in the other. He has a six-pack, and he's white. That's white Jesus, by the way, not the historical Middle Eastern Jesus that he actually was. Right, so the North is devastated, right? So the Confederate papers are all, yeah, woohoo, we did it. North is, holy shit, we just lost 12,500 men. Because like I said, compared to 120,000, that's not that much. But you think about 12,500 brothers, sons, fathers, nephews, cousins. You know what I mean?
Literally double the population of Fredericksburg itself.
Wiped out in one day.
Yes.
For nothing. So Abraham Lincoln has some pretty famous quotes. So after the war, after the battle, he's quoted as, "It wasn't a battle, it was butchery." That's how he views it. It wasn't, it was the North was, cows sent to the slaughter. That's what this was. And in reference to, the papers and the support that he's getting from, people around him, he says, if there's a place worse than hell, I am in it. That's just how devastated he was after this battle. And Burnside gets the label of the Butcher of Fredericksburg, and Hooker ends up replacing him anyways. And Hooker ends up being the general until the Battle of Gettysburg, where before the Battle of Gettysburg, Hooker's replaced and Meade is put in charge. Burnside returns to the command of the 4th Corps, and he fights in other battles. and he continues to be a general in the Civil War. But, you know, when you're fighting under a guy whose name is the Butcher of Fredericksburg, you know, there's going to be a little bit of discontent there.
Yeah. Probably not a good rest of his career.
But is it his fault, right? You know, if he had gotten the boat sooner, you know, that could have been avoided. Now, he can definitely be blamed for not pushing the attack like he should have, instead of sending 120,000 men all at once like he should have, and only sending, you know, brigades at a time. So yeah, it is unfortunate his name is Hooker, but you know, that's old timey names for you. Like, we don't have Burnside as a name anymore. You know, that's a shame. I wish I would have went to high school with a guy named Burnside.
A lot of those old names you really don't see anymore.
Yeah, you really don't.
No.
But yeah, so regardless, despite the fact that this battle was lost, Abe goes ahead and he instates the Emancipation Proclamation, right? He ratifies it, and it becomes a law. So now it's no longer a war to preserve the Union. It's a war to free the slaves and abolish slavery, which, you know, needed to be done because Northern morale was so low at this point, and support for the war was so low that it's no longer about, you know, keeping the Union together. It's about freeing the slaves. So, so yeah, that's kind of the end of it, right? Like I said, I'll dive into what happened after this and what happened before it, and so on and so forth in future podcast episodes, because like I said, I want to go into better detail, but yeah, that's kind of the end of it.
A lot of good battles for this war. But
yes.
This one was really interesting. I didn't know much about it. I think when you sent me a message about it, I was like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, wait, I don't even know, you know, and then it sank in even more. I don't really know much about Civil War battles to begin with. And then I watched that video, and it's so interesting because, like, there is so many firsts, and you can kind of get a sneak peek on how, like, modern combat started to, like, fold out.
Absolutely.
But then it went back to, you know, the normal combat for that century. But still, it's like, you know, that's not the start, but like I even saw in the video about the economy, you know, that was a new one for that battle too.
Right. And it's something that, you know, whenever we have the Confederate Army entrenched on top of this hill, right? This is kind of like the first trench warfare, you know, which comes back in World War I, you know?
Yeah, that sunken road wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that too. So like, kind of see like it's weird because it does from the push, from the Fredericksburg to the hill. It's like an evolution or a de-evolution, I guess, of combat.
Right.
You go to modern combat to World War I combat to very old age combat, Civil War, Revolutionary time period.
And it's really amazing that there wasn't more losses, considering how little the troops were prepared for this, right? Like, you don't get drilled whenever you're training, right? So the army is camped up, you know, for several weeks, and what do? Well, you train, right? And what's training? Well, training is marching in lines. Training is practicing reloading. You don't practice river crossings under fire. You don't practice moving building to building, clearing houses, you know, fucking modern warfare style. And you don't practice trench warfare. Like I said, you line up, you know, my guys in a straight line across the field, your guys in a straight line across the field, and we walk towards each other. You know, there's no stone walls, there's no laying on the ground, there's no cover. You know, that's just how battles are fought. And like you said, over this battle, that all changed.
You just see, like sneak peeks of what's come in future wars.
Exactly, and even in future battles of the Civil War.
Right.
You know? Gettysburg, like I said, you know, go back to Gettysburg. It didn't have the river crossing, but it had this as well. You know, there's urban combat, there's trench warfare, and like I said, it really was an awakening. So the men that survived this battle on the Union side became much more battle hardened. You know, it's like later on in the war, right, generals would use this as sort of ammo to keep the men going. The men would lose morale, and they'd be like, no, remember, men, we were at Fredericksburg, and, we survived Fredericksburg, we can survive anything. So the North did get a bit of a morale boost, not the civilians.
Army did.
Yeah, the Army
but
got a
not
bit
the
of a boost.
civilians and the bureaucrats.
Exactly,
Who,
yeah.
by the way,
Mhm.
would have got terrible reviews if there was Yelp back then. 10 days late?
Absolutely.
On the boat?
That is terrible delivery service.
That is terrible. But I mean, I get because is there any railroads that you could take to get down there a little bit faster at that point in time, though?
You could, but that would be a logistical nightmare.
Right.
Right. So whenever you march with your men, right, your men have their weapons on them and whatnot. They're ready to go. So that you could have taken a rail, but I don't think there was.
No, and I don't know. Now I'm thinking about it. That's a gamble.
It is.
To send, because like, what if the South were to capture that? Then they would have the boats, and that's not good.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty sure these white lines are rail lines.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain. So you have the rail line from Washington D.C. down to Fredericksburg, but they weren't in Washington D.C., right? They were out here like near Warrington, right? So because they came down here, they made this movement, and then they cut back in.
Yeah.
Right. Because the trains were used to to move armies around, but it's something about trains is that they're not very mobile. You can't if you got to move left, you can't do it. You're going in a straight line.
Yeah, you got straight and back.
Right, and then exactly. So they could have, but no, they didn't. They were just not in a good position to do that.
Yeah.
And yes, like I said, that's that's kind of the progenitor to what happens in the rest of the war. And like I said, the men become much more battle hardened. They become much more
Finally got tested.
And in the future, like I said, they would call back on it. So like I said, I'll get into it when I do the Battle of Gettysburg. But after Pickett's charge and the Confederates were pushed back, the Union actually chanted Fredericksburg, Fredericksburg, because
that was a driving factor.
Right, because the North did to the South what the South did to the North at Fredericksburg. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pushed back the assault. So yeah, and like I said, it's a battle that's not that well known outside of Civil War historians. You know what I mean? Who know fucking everything. And it's a very interesting battle. And yeah, I'm glad you're able to join me, DB.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was actually really enjoyable listening to this. I didn't really talk much. I was too busy listening because, I listened to that and watched that video, but, you don't... There's a lot to this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a more nuance, like we said beforehand. It's a lot more nuanced than what, like, other wars, other battles that happened were.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was really, really fascinating to learn about this because I had aside from Gettysburg, or the Battle of Antietam too. That was before this, right? Like one or two battles beforehand.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that McClellan fought at Antietam, and the North won at Antietam, right?
I thought it was a draw. That's what I saw from the video.
Okay.
Maybe that was their like first like kind of victory. Depends on who tells the story. A draw could be a win in both eyes,
Right. That's something that I don't know much about the Battle of Antietam. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll read up on that, and that'll be the next one. Do the Battle of Antietam. That sounds like fun. But yeah, so quick commercials, right? Follow me on Twitter at taprap. Go to youtube.com/dangerboyspodcast and hit the subscribe button. You guys can watch all of the... Are
we going to get a recap on Sunday about the games? Football games?
Depends on how it goes.
Oh.
If it's a close loss, well-fought loss, probably not. If we go out there and embarrass ourselves, probably.
Ooh.
Yeah,
it's gonna be another fired up one.
It could be another fired up one. And then obviously I'm on Twitch, right? So if you want to come watch me live stream, I'm gonna try and do this more often. Want to watch the podcast get recorded live, go to twitch.tv/tappers74 and drop the follow button. But yeah, that's kind of it. I said I'm gonna try and get together. Maybe we'll do this again for the Battle of Manassas or Bull Run, or even just another battle from another war. Maybe one that doesn't even involve America. Like I said, we'll get into Napoleon. That'd be pretty cool.
Learn something new.
Exactly. Learn some new stuff. But apparently Taptacat tells me that Nerdluck's streaming.
Ooh.
So I think I'm going to go raid Nerdluck.
It's Nerdluck.
Let's see. Ba-ba-ba. Make sure that I spell it right. There we go.
Let's see. Can he still do it?
Let's see. Can I pull it off?
Can it be pulled off?
Hell yes, I can.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And like I said, this will be up on the YouTube channel in a couple of days. Shouldn't take that long to render. So go youtube.com/DangerBoysPodcast. Hit the subscribe button there, and like, comment, subscribe. All right.
Nice.
Peace out.